This is the Bernina sewing machine that we use here at Cheltenham. Firstly, I'd like to take you through the parts of the machine. On the side of the machine you will find the power switch, which turns the machine on, but also if you put it on one, it will turn the light on as well, so you can see your work. Also on the side of the machine is the hand wheel. You use the hand wheel to move the needle up and down, and you must always use the hand wheel by moving it towards yourself. On the top of the machine you will find the spool pins. The spool pins carry the reels of thread that we use on the sewing machine. Across the top of the machine you will firstly find the bobbin winder. The bobbin winder should always be to the left when you're sewing. When you're winding a bobbin you will shift it across to the right. The patterns on the top of the machine are the choice of stitches that you have. At this point we use zigzag and straight stitch, which is on the bottom of the list of patterns. The little lever on the side shifts out and moves up to change the pattern that you would like to use. We keep it at the bottom where we use straight stitch and zigzag. Across on the top you will also find a little wheel that has numbers on it. It also has two red lines, one on the machine and one on the wheel. Those two red lines need to be meeting one another. This is the tension wheel, and what that does is it changes the tension on the stitch of the machine, so you need to make sure that those two red lines are meeting, and that will mean that the tension is correct and you will have normal straight stitching. Alongside the tension wheel is a thread guide. It just brings the thread from the back to the front of the machine. On the front of the machine you will find a little lever that goes up and down. This is called the take-up lever. When you turn the hand wheel it moves the take-up lever up and down, and that basically just takes the thread up and down with it when you are sewing. Also on the front of the machine you will find another thread guide, just another way of holding the thread once it's been threaded through the machine and you are sewing. The needle is at the front, that also holds the thread, and this little lever here is called the presser foot. It pulled up from a lever at the back of the machine. You put your fabric underneath, and then you must make sure that you put it down before you sew, because it holds the fabric in place, and make sure that it is guided through the machine in the correct way. The dials on the front of the machine are, the one at the top is called the stitch width control. It controls how wide your stitch is, so if you're on 0 it means you're doing straight stitch because you don't have any width, and then if you're doing zigzag you'll change to one of the numbers depending on how wide you want your stitch to be. We usually use 3 as a general guide. In the middle of the stitch width control is the needle position control. When you are sewing you should always have the needle position control straight up and down. It means the needle is in the middle of the fabric. If you turn it from one side to the other it will shift the needle from one side to the other, but we should always keep it in the middle. Underneath the stitch width control is the buttonholer. The buttonholer is an automatic way of sewing a button. If it's on 0 it means it's not operating and you can sew normally on your machine. If you find that the buttonholer has been shifted to one of the numbers, what that does is it tells the machine that you want to do buttonhole. So if you try to stitch when you have the buttonhole turned on, it means that it will be telling you to do whatever it's up to, and it means that you won't. It might mean that the stitch is only going, the needle's only going up and down, and it's not working for you. So you need to make sure the buttonholer is on 0, and that way you can still keep doing your straight stitch or your zigzag. Underneath the buttonholer is the stitch length control. The stitch length control controls how long the stitch is going to be, and in general 2.5 is the length that we like our stitches to be. The stitch length control is twisted and moves up and down. If you twist it and make sure that it's left on 2.5, we use that for all our sewing. The other thing that the stitch length control also does is it becomes the reverse stitch. So if you'd like to go in reverse, what you need to do is hold the stitch length control up to the top. You can't twist it and keep it there in any way. You must hold it up in that position. Do your backward stitching and then you can let it go down again to 2.5 and you'll go forward again. The dial on the bottom is called the drop feed control. It has two patterns. On one side it has a zigzag and a straight stitch pattern, on the other side it has a checkered pattern. When we are sewing straight stitch and zigzag, we need to have it on the straight stitch and zigzag pattern. What it does is, as the fabric is going through the machine, the little feet underneath the presser foot come up and down and drag the fabric through. So it helps to guide the fabric in a straight line. If you turn the drop feed control to the checkered pattern, the feet disappear and they don't come up. And so basically you'll just be going up and down in one spot if you're trying to sew in that position. So when you set up for sewing, you must also always make sure that the zigzag and straight stitch pattern is where the drop feed control is indicating. Once you have all those things in the correct place, you're then ready to thread up your machine. At the end of sewing, when you put your machine away, you should also make sure that the stitch width is on 0 and the stitch length is on 2.5, the drop feed is on the zigzag and straight stitch pattern, the tension is correct with the two red lines matching together, and then the next person who comes to use your machine will know that it is set up correctly to start the straight stitch.